Hey, Coach, how you doing? Can you hear me? Just have to unmute.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I couldn't stay for the whole thing, but I enjoyed the parts I listened to this afternoon. That was real interesting.
Yeah,
Very, very informative.
yeah. That's the Mount Winmore of college baseball.
Hi, Coach Weinstein. How you doing? You just have to unmute.
Yeah,
Hey guys.
yeah. But they were outstanding.
You had
Yeah.
about 70 people there.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. We've it's had been anywhere from 50 to 70 since we've done it. We've had some really good guys come in and speak over in that little session. Dayton Moore spoke last week. The week prior, we had Mike Baxter. We've had Derek Johnson. We've had a whole fleet of guys. Andy McKay.
You do it
Mike Baxter was really good, Fred.
He was, yeah, was very good.
Who do you have next week?
We haven't decided yet. We haven't figured it out. Yeah, that was we figured that one out on this past today's I think Thursday or Friday. When did we come up with that, Skip? When did I ask
Yeah,
you?
Friday.
Yeah,
I
Friday.
think you got Tanner in there on Friday.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was good. Tom Griffin says he has a man crush on Coach Polk.
Polk is great. Well, he'll have to come up to the Cape and visit us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll make sure we tell him that on Friday.
Yeah, tell him.
Yeah.
Where are most of your players playing, Coach Corral, this summer? Aren't most of them not playing, or?
Yeah, it's most of them are not. They're just because none of the leagues started up. There is one in St. Louis, the little Pioneer League, that I've got a couple arms and a catcher playing in, but they've all been working in facilities nearby, and it's amazing. They've all gotten better. We've got guys that are throwing the tar out of it right now, and one of the things, if you look at the things differently, the things you look at, can change if you change your thoughts about them. So we just told our guys that they can work on their stuff right now, take the benefit of working on their stuff without the scoreboard being a factor, without putting the team in jeopardy. Because anytime you make any adjustments as a coach, you're trying to get this guy better, you go with that slight decline before that. And a lot of them, Jerry's getting, he's going to have a future first rounder thrown for him in the Cape.
Which guy?
Spencer Miles.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's 93, 94 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many players are you going to lose in the draft?
There's one that has a very good chance, and a second one that's questionable, but Ian Bedell, our right-handed arm that we've got.
Would he go in the first 5, or does he sign after?
No, he's going to go hopefully in the top 3, or else he's coming back, and we're trying to figure out how, because we think it would benefit.
He won't sign in the 4th or 5th.
No.
I think you'll have him back, Fred.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear, because the thing, I think it'll benefit him to come back another. He left high school early.
Right.
So he'd be a true junior next year.
Right.
And I really think he can really up his status, especially with the staff that we'll have next year, because we'll be a lot deeper. Workload won't be as great on him. He'll be able to flash his stuff better.
Right. Well, I hope he does come back. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you think Torkelson goes first?
Yes.
Is the big question who goes two then?
Probably. Hi, Dave.
He's connecting his audio. Got to connect your audio, coach.
Serrano, audio.
Got it.
You're a tech whiz.
Absolutely.
You can
Hey,
plug
by the
in-
way, Coach Horton said to say hello to you guys, Jerry and
Who did? Oh, did you talk to George? Oh,
Yeah.
you did that thing with Coop, huh?
yeah, that was really good. That was really
Nice.
good. He did a good job, and it was fun. It was a fun night for us, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
How long did that last? How many hours did you guys go?
2 hours and about 30 cuss words from Hookie.
Of course. Why not?
Yeah. That's a little
No, but he
shy
said,
of
to say hello,
what
he said to say hello to both you guys.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. How's he doing?
He's doing okay. I wish he'd be a little bit more active, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He's gotten pretty heavy. I worry about his health. And, I keep trying to encourage him to get out and walk and start somewhere,
Yeah.
but he hasn't. So
Tell him to go out and demonstrate.
what's that?
Tell him to go out and demonstrate.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I got to reach out to him.
Dirk,
say
did you
hello to him.
get my sheets that I sent out?
We did, and Scott has it. Thank you.
Okay.
So again, just remember, folks, when you're speaking, I'm going to make you the host. And then when you're done, just flip back to me as the host, and I'll flip it to the next person.
Okay. Now you're talking a little Chinese to me right now. So
Okay, so if you go over,
on
if
my
you,
screen to be a host.
okay, so I'm going to show you. So I'm going to make you a host right now. You'll get a message that says you are now the host.
Okay.
Okay. So now when you want to flip it back to me, if you see on the right-hand side where all the names are listed.
See, I don't see any names on
Okay,
mine.
so go to the bottom. You see it says participants across
Yes.
the bottom.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, click on that.
Okay.
You'll see all the participants. Then you find my name and just hover your cursor over the video camera there. And it says more.
All right. Hold on. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Click on more and now make me the host. So it should say make host.
It just said rename when I touched more. Let me try it again.
Hey, Dirk, you can give all of us co-host.
I thought I could, but I'm having
Yeah.
trouble. I was under the impression I could, but I can't locate how to do that.
Yeah,
Because
just go to to our name and just on the right. Yeah, I think you can click as a co-host.
No, it's not giving me that option. That's the problem. It's only giving me a make host option.
Now, are you back to host again or no?
No, you're still the host. So click on actually go up to my name,
Yeah.
and you should be able to hover over the camera, and it should say more.
The camera's on mine right now.
No, but if you go over to my name, where it says Dirk Drieberg,
Yeah.
okay, you should have an icon for a mic and an icon for a camera.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. Okay.
Click on the camera. It should say more.
Yeah.
And then when it should give you a drop down, it says make host.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if you can
Okay.
flip it back to me. Yeah, it's for some reason, Coach, it's not giving me that option. It should
Yeah.
give me make co-host, but it's not. And I don't know why. That's part of the problem. So I'm gonna have to call them tomorrow and find out. But have you ever tried calling Zoom? Not a hope in hell. It's
Hey,
the
how did
most.
your thing? I couldn't get on today because I had stuff going on. How'd you guys' thing go today?
It went well. Yeah, they gave us 2 hours. Jerry, Skip, and Ray and Coach Polk. They went for 2 hours and just shared a lot of wonderful information.
Did Coach Weinstein? Did you get to talk, or did Coach Polk talk the whole time?
Actually, Skip took control,
Yeah.
but everybody got enough airtime. It was not a problem.
Yeah, Skip is such the manager that he took over the whole moderating and everything. He was going, creating questions. He was doing great. Yeah.
Hey,
Jerry,
Scott.
where are you at right now, Jerry? What part of the country? You in California?
I'm in Slow.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And where are you in Northridge?
No, I'm in Knoxville. I've been in Knoxville since we
Okay.
shut down. I
Oh,
still
really?
have a home out here, so I felt it was safer out here.
Yeah, we had downtown demonstrations today and businesses boarded up and stuff in Little Slow Town. If you can imagine that.
Yeah, I know.
It's a joke.
Yeah, it's too bad what's going on around us. Dirk, have you guys dealt with the pandemic as much as we have?
So we have. So it's interesting because Canada and especially Ontario, where we are, probably got ahead of it a lot more. That said, and took a very hard line on a lot of things, to the extent that we have a 3-stage reopening. We're only in stage 1. So the province of Ontario has a no gathering over 5 right now, and no team sports. You can have individual sports. Dad and son can go to the park, but you can have no team activities. And part of the challenge is the numbers are still, the percentages are high, and they're very committed to not, they were most worried about October, November, and the fall period, and the second wave, because that's usually flu season up here. And they're really concerned about that. So they've taken an extremely hard line, and we got out in front of it earlier. Didn't ramp up the testing till about the last month or so, but the percentages of positive cases is still not coming down to a level they would like it to.
Yeah, I'm concerned about us again next spring, to be honest with you, because it's going to come back.
Unless they can find a therapeutic or a vaccine.
The only thing that I think is a little funny, not funny, nothing's funny what's going on, is that if you noticed in the news, it's not talked about very much anymore with everything else going on.
Sadly or not, that's taken over the narrative right now.
Yeah, well, that's
and
kind of how it works.
here's the sadder part, though. If community spread is an issue,
we're going to be blown up in a week.
Exactly. I mean, Florida had or Miami or Florida had the single largest number of cases today or yesterday. Nothing have they seen in 3 months like they saw. It was either yesterday or today, whatever number was reported. I guess it was yesterday's number. Single largest number of cases. So
I'm surprised, and Fred, you'll get a kick out of this. I'm surprised that Power 5 schools, athletic directors aren't standing in the streets not allowing protests, because playing football is very important right now.
Yeah. No, it is very, very important. You know, we're taking a reduction for pay, and if football doesn't, it's just going to continue. And
I know.
After another 3 months here, they're going to reevaluate. We had to let go of our strength coach.
Oh, really?
Just last week, as a result of downsizing.
The baseball strength coach, the baseball one?
Yep. And, Steve's looking at the budget with a microscope, and he's trying to figure out all the stuff so that, we don't lose any staff members. With, we may be going on Friday trips next season, leaving Friday morning.
Hey, Dirk, real quick, can you hear that noise in the background? Are you getting background? The gardeners are out front right now. They should be done in a minute. So, and we're not going on for 5 minutes. So,
no problem. Just send them over up to Toronto when they're done.
I was worried that we would get hit tremendously hard because we're a Cal State school. Across the board, 15% budget cuts. They've talked about all coaches in athletic department, 1 furlough day a month for 10 months, which that's not that big of a deal. And I have to downscale games. I'm only going to probably be able to play 48 games this year.
Wow.
Yeah, to save money.
Wow.
But no staff cuts, nothing like that. So I kind of consider that a win a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, our big issue up here right now is the people talking about hockey, because you're in confined space right in the rinks. And being up here, what it is the real crazies are going crazy, because it's like, well, what do you mean there's going to be no hockey? Well, how are you going to jam 17 kids into a change room, right? With everything going on. So it's like Oxford, what is it? Oxford University in England has already said online all the way to next summer. Already committed. So.
Yeah. Mhm.
Now, most of the schools that you guys are with, is the plan still to come back in some form in August for classes, be it a hybrid or I know my eldest is going to Indiana in the fall, and they said they're going to go no fall break. They'll go to American Thanksgiving, then everybody leaves online, and then they won't start the in-class of the spring term till mid to the third week of January. No spring break.
We're online the whole time in the fall. We are fighting right now whether we're going to be able to have fall ball, which I think we will be able to, but it's going to be a real scaled back version. 10 people in the weight room at a time, no locker room access. It's going to be completely different. So, hey Scott, while you're on, in order, we will go throwing routine. As you put the props up, throwing routine, and then arm care, and then dry mechanics. With a 12-minute window, with everything I have down, when we post those up, I'm going to go over mostly the throwing routine and dry mechanic routine that I have. I'm not going to get that much into arm care because people have a lot of different versions of that, but I'll have my version up. I'll talk about that's one thing to do because I want to get more into the practice drills that we do that I think some are pretty good for development and for repetition and quality work and all that.
Yeah, I was going over your what you sent to Dirk, and it's great. Like I'm looking at your the dry mechanics, especially the working in the stuff like the picks and the competitive step offs and that kind of stuff is going to be great for this crowd. And you're exactly right.
That's always a winner for me. And I'll be honest with you, when I became a head coach and I was the pitching coach without a helper, it's something I had to come up with because as you get pulled as a head coach. And I think it's important for someone to be with the pitchers all the time. And this was something I came up, and I'm going to give props because a lot of this is stuff that I learned from Ken Revisa about imagery and all that that's how I came up with this, of a plan that it's just visualization of exactly what can happen in the game. And the thing why I like this is because it's not perfect, but everything in this that the pitcher can do without throwing a baseball is almost everything that could happen to them during a game.
100%. No, I love it. I like the term. I think it's Paul Nyman who uses it as deliberate practice. Is that deliberate practice into your routine? And I'm reading over this, and the crew that we're coming in, it's going to be great. Like it's they'll complain we don't have enough practice time for everything, but now you've built this into the warm up, the pre-pitch, and now you've taken care of a lot of it, which is great for this crowd. Great.
Well, to me, this, and everyone is under time constraints. To me, this dry mechanic routine, someone could go home and do this.
Yes.
You don't need a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys that want to be good, they'll do this. And that's why the game will slow down for them. Mm-hmm. And I'll emphasize all that kind of stuff.
Especially for this crew that's sending this stuff home online for the kids to do. That's great.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, would you mind if I put my screen up to make sure that my PowerPoint shows up?
Yeah, go ahead. Dirk, you'll have to give him the host abilities.
I'm going to make you a host for a second. Okay, go ahead. Hey, welcome, Shaun. You got to unmute there, buddy. Just to give everybody a heads up, we got about 120, 125 signed up when I last checked. A good cross section of travel team coaches, high school coaches, collegiate coaches, and a couple of minor pro guys. And Brent Strom did register. He actually tried to get on last night because he thought it was last night. He kind of messed up the day. So hopefully he gets on tonight. And I think we got about 10 U.S. states represented, and the rest are from Canada. So does that work, Coach Weinstein?
Yes. Yeah, okay. We're fine. Let me get back to you.
Yep, and then I'm going to let everybody in the room and we can get started.
Let me find you here.
So Dirk, you'll be good with Coach Serrano's stuff to put up while he's talking?
No, I thought you were going to put it up.
Okay.
Sorry, Scott.
No worries. I'll get out of this.
I just need to get control here.
Let's see. Make host.
There you go.
All right, you're all set, brother.
So let's see. Can you get out of share screen there?
Yeah.
You are viewing
Okay. Admit all.
now. So I've got it here.
Okay, we're gonna get going.
The open.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Baseball Ontario Around the Horn webinar. Again, a warm welcome to coaches from around Ontario, across Canada. And as I always say, a very warm and special welcome to all the baseball and softball coaches from south of the border. Glad to have everyone with us. And what a night it's going to be. 4 coaches, 125 years. That's right, 125 years of collective coaching experience between the 4 of them. Coach Corral, Coach Serrano, Coach Weinstein, and Coach Cole. Welcome on behalf of Baseball Ontario. Tonight, your host, back in the host chair, once again, is Scott Robinson. Scott is a coach here in Ontario, played 4 years at the University of Maine as a pitcher, has coached the Ontario youth team, and right now is a travel coach. He is one of the most innovative and best young pitching coaches in Canada, and a great host. And he's looking forward to talking pitching with our 4 guests tonight. So without further ado, let me just introduce the 4. Quite frankly, these introductions could easily take an hour and a half, but I'll try to boil it down to about a minute and a half. Our first guest started his coaching career at the University of Arizona in 2009. While there, he helped the Wildcats win the College World Series in 2012. He spent time at USA Baseball as director of the 18U national team, winning the 2015 WBSC 18U World Championships. From late 2015 to the end of 2017, he was the coordinator of player development for the San Diego Padres, and also coached and developed the organization's top pitching prospects in 2016 in short season Class A ball. He was instrumental in the Padres' drafting of Cal Quantrill and in the conversion of Christian Betancourt and Jose Ruiz from catchers to pitchers, with both making it to the major leagues within a year. The past 2 seasons, he's served as the associate head coach and pitching coach at Eastern Kentucky University, and he has the distinction, and Shaun, you know I'm going to talk about this, buddy. He has the distinction of being the only coach in 36 years of the Baseball Ontario Best Ever Coaches Clinic of appearing in a suit for all his presentations. And he says he'll never do that ever again.
Well, and I'm surprised you haven't talked about the photo that you guys posted, because it's ironic, and that was not my choice. Coach Thompson required all of us to wear suits. So I was expecting this, but thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me tonight.
Welcome, Shaun. Our second coach began his coaching career in the Alaskan Summer League and at San Joaquin Delta College in 1993. His coaching career has taken him to Tennessee, Oklahoma, Memphis, Georgia, and for the past 3 seasons, Missouri. He has also spent time in Major League Baseball with both the Montreal Expos and Los Angeles Dodgers organizations. A passionate and lifelong learner. For those of you who spend time on these webinars, he is always on each and every webinar, and one of the most sought after pitching coaches. Welcome from the University of Missouri, Coach Fred Corral. Our third coach started coaching in 1988, spent 7 years at Cal State Fulton, including 4 College World Series trips and 1 national championship. He has spent time at UC Irvine, Tennessee, and West Virginia. This season, he started his first year as head coach at Cal State Northridge, one of the most experienced and well-respected coaches in college baseball, having spent 25 years at the D1 level, including 14 as a head coach. He also has the distinction as being only one of 12 coaches in history to lead 2 different schools to the College World Series. Welcome, Coach Serrano. Finally, and lastly, and definitely not least, this gentleman began coaching in 1966 at UCLA. He's also coached at Miami before moving to Sacramento College, where he spent much of his coaching career. During his coaching career, over 54 years, he has managed at various levels in the minor leagues and the Cape Cod League, coached Team USA in the Olympics, and spent much of the past 8 years on both the major league staff as well as in player development with the Colorado Rockies. He is a Hall of Fame member of the ABCA. I like to say he has forgotten more about baseball than all of us on this call know about baseball. personal story, true story. Each year I have the privilege of going to the ABCA convention, and each year it amazes me that Coach Weinstein is always front row at the presentation with his notebook taking notes. And if he can do that, guess what, folks? All of us baseball and softball coaches across North America can do the same. So Coach Weinstein, welcome. So without further ado, let's get at it. Scott, over to you, buddy.
Am I supposed to follow that? Like, really? So, all right. So I'm really excited about this. I told these gentlemen yesterday on our call that I could spend 90 minutes with all of them. So I'm going to try to do my best to keep this under the 90 minutes. But I'm really excited. So what the plan is for today is we've got 4 amazing coaches, and each coach is going to have their own topic to riff on for about 12 minutes. Open it up for maybe 1 or 2 questions that might take us 15, 16 minutes each. And then the plan is at the end, once everyone's done their piece, is we'll open it up to a little bit of a hot stove. We've got some burning questions that we can open up to the floor, and then we can go from there. So without further ado, like I said, this is exciting for me. So we are going to start with Coach Serrano, who, funny story is, with anyone who knows me, who goes to the best ever, I stalk all these coaches. They don't know it. They don't remember me, but I stalk them. I go to the side rooms, the side panels, and that's what we do. And Coach Serrano is, I've always regarded you as one of the most professional guys I've ever met. And a buddy of mine, we went to the side room. You did a talk on practice planning, and it was awesome. So go to the side room, wanted to ask you a few questions, and we didn't get picked first. This gentleman in the back got picked first. And my buddy and I are like, oh, this is going to be great. And the question was, and you're at all the schools you've coached at, or you've got top level talent that are getting drafted, making the majors. And the first question was, do all your guys, are all they on scholarship, or do they all play hockey in the off season? And my buddy and I looked at each other and we're like, I can't believe that's the first question being asked, but you were such a professional answering that question. I was like, I couldn't do it. I don't know how you did it, which was just awesome. But you're going to take us through daily practice for pitching development, which I think is going to be great for this room. Is I've got your slides, so I'll share my screen, and then I'll time you. We got 12 minutes, and I'll try to keep you under because I know how great of a topic this is going to be. So here we go. Let's see. Dirk, can you let me host? There we go. Share screen. Boom.
While you're doing that, just a reminder, everybody, if you want to see the speaker, just switch your top right corner to speaker view if you want to get a close-up of what's on the screen, as well as to listen to the speaker only.
Well, first of all, I appreciate being on this great panel with these wonderful, talented, and brilliant coaches. And Dirk, I appreciate you for asking. And the coaches that are on here to learn, I commend you. For you guys taking time out of your night to learn the game. I'm going to learn the game myself from these wonderful coaches, and I appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully by the end of the night of what I'm talking about, you'll understand that the great coaches I played for and the great coaches I've coached with, it's about attention to detail, it's quality over quantity, and it's quality repetition, repetition, repetition. And it's about getting your players to buy into it, keeping them interested and allowing them to buy into it is what works. The first topic I'm going to talk about is our throwing program. And it's 12 minutes and I've got a lot of detail to go through. So as Scott puts this up, obviously you have access to that you could print off and you could ask questions later. But I believe in today's game, one of my pet peeves is the fact that I don't think young student athletes put enough emphasis into catch play. I get asked the question all the time from young kids that I've worked with to the college kids, how do I get my son's arm strength to be better? How does my arm become more developed? It's about quality catch play on a daily basis. And I know everybody has different formulas of catch play, but I just think the discipline and the focus that goes into this, and us as coaches have got to emphasize this on a daily basis. I'm with college kids every single day. And me or one of my assistants is with our players all the time when they're playing catch. And as you see the program here, we do something a little different. I'm not going to lie. I learned this when I was with Coach Horton. Before we ever throw a ball after our dynamic stretch and all that, we go into a close quarters catch before they ever throw a baseball. And the close quarters catch are all little throwing motions that a lot of guys never work on, but we do them during the game. We start out with the underhand flip with our partner. We're about 10 to 12 feet apart. We break it down and we flip to our partner with a stiff wrist and where you're focusing on hitting the guy in the chest. The same kind of throw that you're going to see on a comebacker or a ball that takes the pitcher to the first base side. Then our pitchers will each put the ball to their right side, go down to a knee, bend over, pick it up, bend at the knees, and throw the ball to their partner about 10 feet away. I like these guys to start out because it's a warm-up drill, and those are throws that I believe not enough of us coaches work on with our players. And again, I categorize them as close quarters catch. Many of us know that pitchers are good. Most pitchers are good from 60 feet, 6 inches. It's the other throws that they struggle in. So I try to break down our guys to make every different throw, every different flip that they're going to have to perform in the game. We go to a knee with our partner. We work on our full arm speed, feeling the fingers on top of the baseball. We do a flat foot drill, and then we go into a rocker drill. And this is all stuff you can ask, but it's not stuff I'm going to cover. And then everyone's got a little different of a feel for the amount of throws, the distance. We like to go a 30 feet start of playing catch with your partner. I like to emphasize to our guys that I like our guys to match up with the same throwing partner as much as possible. So they get to learn each other and could teach each other of what they're doing with their mechanics. And for me, catch play is about development. It's about good body control. It's about concentration, focus, and discipline. Our guys will go 8 to 10 throws from 30 feet, 8 to 10 throws from 45 feet, 8 to 10 throws from 60 feet, 10 to 12 throws from 90 feet, where we're mixing in every other throw as a changeup. I'm a big changeup guy. I love developing the changeup. It's the best pitch in the game. And one of the things that I've seen, one of the fastest ways of developing the changeup is by teaching it by playing long catch with it, where you're generating arm speed, and it's got to happen in catch play. And then we finish up 120 feet, 10 to 12 throws, where we're lengthening it out, stretching the arm muscles out. Again, another drill, long catch. I don't care if you're coaching an 8-year-old team, if you're coaching a team of 18 to 21-year-olds. Long catch, to me, is the best development for arm strength buildup. It should be non-taxing on the arm, and it's something that pitchers should become something they naturally do every day. Then we like bringing our guys back into 60 feet, and they get with their partner, and they work on flat ground drills with their partner where they can work with their pitches. But to me, it's playing catch with a purpose. Best and worst habits can be found in catch play. And I tell my players that all the time. You can develop bad mechanics by what you're doing in your catch play. You can develop very good habits by what you're doing in your catch play. And I know at all levels, catch play is not exciting. Hitting on the main field is exciting. Hitting in the cage is exciting. You've got to emphasize to your players that catch play at the end of the day is probably the biggest development stage of them being a good baseball player. Because as the great coaches that are on here know, that baseball comes down to throwing strikes, playing catch, and putting the ball in play. And two of those factors are being able to play catch to the minute. And it's just it's a drill that I think kids have kind of pushed away, and it's a boring part of baseball. And as a coach, you've got to emphasize it more and more. The next thing I'm going to go over is the pitching arm care. Pitching arm care. And again, a lot of information here. We do stuff with bands. We do stuff with wrist weights. We do stuff with shoulder tubes and body blades. We do stuff with heavy balls. That's all to your own philosophy of what you want to do with that. Everyone has a different take on that. I will admit that over the last 5 to 10 years, this has become a bigger factor in our pitching formula each and every day. The one thing I will admit in this stuff, and I want to say this correctly, is that we put an emphasis on this, but to me, I'm going to put an emphasis more in the focus and the concentration of their bullpens, the focus and concentration in their throwing drills and their throwing program. Sometimes pitchers can make this a fluff session where they think this is going to make them good. I think this is for arm care, and this is for preventative of injuries. But to me, this isn't something that you're competing in as much. So that's why I think sometimes pitchers put a lot of emphasis in this and focus into this. And again, I'm not against it. I just think that this doesn't make a pitcher compete well on the field. It allows them to not have injuries as much, allows their arm to get warm and all that. But I'm very old school that I think sometimes pitchers put too much emphasis into this and think this is what's going to be the end all for them to succeed. And to me, there's so many other factors and things I'm going to go into, but just having a good quality throwing program to me is something that can carry them to the next level of being able to be the pitcher they want to be. The next thing I'm going to take some time on, and that's the pitching dry mechanic routine. This is something our pitchers do every single day at every program I've been at since the time I was at UC Irvine as a head coach. And the reason why I put this together, and this will probably carry a lot of weight for many coaches on here, because you don't have a lot of help. You may not have a 4-man staff like I have. You may not have more than 1 or 2 people. So there's going to be times of your practices where your players or your pitchers are going to be off on their own. And that's one of the reasons why I came up with this routine when I became a head coach, because I was the head coach and the pitching coach, and I wanted to have something that could maximize the development of our players each and every day. I won't take full credit for this. This is something I came up with, but it's from the learning from Dr. Ken Revisa, who has since passed on, a mental training coach that about imagery of where I got this from. The routine is, it takes about 12 to 15 minutes if you're doing it right, and you're doing everything without throwing a baseball. And I'll say this to all the coaches on here. I've really become very sensitive to how many throws our pitchers do on a daily basis. They have a great throwing program, but in the dry routine, and I'll talk about dry mechanics for PFP, I've really cut back on how many throws our pitchers are doing on a daily basis. In this dry mechanics routine, they're going to straddle. They may be on a rubber. They could be on the warning track. They could be anywhere. They could do this at home. They're going to go through a pitch routine, a 4-pitch sequence, 2 times out of the windup. And it's game-like. There's no baseball. What I've done in the past is I've got each one of our players a towel, a hand towel. I've taped it. I've attached a golf ball in it so they have something to hold on to as like a towel drill. And they'll go through their pitching routine out of the windup in a 4-pitch sequence 2 times. It's about imagery. It's about them executing pitches. I tell our guys it's whatever sequence they want for that day. It could be fastball, slider, change, slider, but it's a sequence they stay in, and they go through it twice. Then they go into the stretch, and it's the same thing. It's a pitch routine, 4-pitch sequence, and they go through that 2 times. And if they're doing it right, they'll actually be like you're in their game. They'll start perspiring a little bit because they're competing, and they should be competing in this. And again, why I put this together is because I could be away from them at the time. I could look down to where the area they're at, and I know exactly where they're at in their routine, going through their imagery of their dry mechanics. Then they stay on the stretch, and they go through in a bunt defense with a runner at first base. And most of the time, runner at first base, the pitcher has the first base side. They're going to act like they're executing a fastball middle of the plate. We call that a 0. And they're going to take a step towards the first base side. We try to emphasize after the ball releases out of their hand, they gain ground, not running to the first base side. They gain a step to the first base side. So it becomes natural when it's in the game and we're in a bunt defense. It sounds easy. It's easier said than done. It's not something that's common for those guys. What they tend to do is, unless they work on a lot, is they want to get to the first base side before they release the baseball. And then sure enough, you have a ball or you have a guy hitting the back. And as every coach knows, the most important thing of a bunt defense starts with strike 1. So it's executing the pitch and then getting to the area of the field that you're supposed to field the ball. And that's just by gaining a step. So they do that 3 times, imaging, throwing a fastball 0, getting to the first base side. After that, still the runner on first, they're going to go 3 reps of a step off, and a competitive step off, not just stepping off the rubber, a step off. A lot of people call it different terminology, but a competitive step off, acting like you're trying to get movement out of the runner at first base. And again, if they're competing, it looks real. They're just not executing the throws at that time. Then they'll go, same thing, runner at first, and they'll simulate throwing a competitive pick, where they're picking, whether they're right-handed or left-handed, where they're picking to first base, no throw, they're moving quick feet, they're getting their arm in a throwing position, and they're doing that 3 times. Now, as I put this together, almost like it's in order, now it's like the bunt was executed, and then now it's simulated runners in first and second. Now you go into a bunt defense again, and it's in the bunt defense, it's runners, and it says runner at second, but basically it's a runner at first and second kind of. It's the lead runners at second. And they go into a look sequence, whatever your look sequence is in your program, and they do an inside move. Something that a lot of college coaches do to see if they could tip the bunter to show that he's giving bunt. So you do an inside move. They do that 3 times. They're working on their mechanics of their inside move, keeping their head on the target, doing an inside move, seeing if we could get something to set up a bunt defense. Then after those 3, they'll go into another rep of runners at first and second. They'll go fastball 0 simulation and a bunt defense where they're breaking now to the third base side, a step, gaining ground, anticipating the bunt to the third base side, which in that they're thinking getting the lead runner at third. Most important thing starts with throwing a strike. Then the next thing is getting an out, but they're simulating breaking to the third base side, and the flight of the ball dictates what their motion is going to be of where they're throwing the baseball. So right about then, that takes about 8-9 minutes if you're doing it right. And like I said, it's the buy-in in this. I think over the years, the guys that have been successful, to me, are the guys that have bought into this. And I think that goes for anything that these coaches are going to talk about tonight. It's the buy-in from the players to see the development of that. But I think the muscle memory, and I share this with my pitchers when I show this to them, when we go through this, the muscle memory this builds up, all the things I talked about are things that are going to happen over the course of a game, a season, and they have practiced that over and over every single day. That's part of their routine, and they haven't had any taxing on their arm at all. Then we'll go back out of the windup, and we'll go runner at third, holding runner sequence. And again, something that we as coaches, one of my big pet peeves has always been that when a runner gets to third base, that the pitcher doesn't check him after he gets the sign. That's just, you're just asking for someone to steal home, like I know Coach Weinstein used to do at Sac City when he was coaching there. That's discipline. And I think for me, if your pitcher isn't doing that, that's a reflection on you not coaching him right, because that's a checkpoint that should happen every single time. It's sign, runner, get him stopped with your eyes. When you're comfortable where he's at, pick up the target, go to the plate. So it's something we do every single day, so it becomes just natural to our guys when there's a runner on third base. So that's something we do 3 times, holding the runner sequence. And then again, every program's a little different. Some programs call every pitch. Some programs allow pitchers to shake. And so we go through that too. We go runner at third. We want our guys to correctly be able to shake, whether it's with the glove or with their head motion, and be able to execute the pitch with a runner on third. Again, all mental training things, all repetition things, but again, all sequences that your pitchers over the course of the season are going to come up against, and it's stuff that our guys get an opportunity to practice every single day. And even then, they're not perfect, but they're closer to being perfect because it becomes something natural and the muscle memory is there. And at the bottom, as you can see, all dry mechanics are done with intent and conviction. You get what you put into it. Be as specific and precise with detail as possible for maximum benefit. And again, a very simplified thing, and a lot of the things that I've learned over coaching can get very complex. I like to keep it simplified. And I think this is one thing for every coach out there to emphasize to their players, because it's not just something they could do at the field. This is something they could do in their living room. This is something they could do in their bedroom. This is something they can do on their driveway every single day. And as every coach on here that has coached at the collegiate level knows, if your players think the 20 hours we get a week to develop them is going to allow them to be what they want to be, whether it's a professional player or an All-American, they're fooling themselves. It's the extra work they do on the side. And this is a sequence and a drill that you can do without even having a partner and allow yourself to grow and get better in that situation. Next thing I want to talk about is some drill am I way over, Scott?
A little bit.
Okay.
That's all right.
Let me just do the next 2, okay? The next 2.
No problem. No problem.
2 things for practice drills, and I'm sorry I've taken so long. Ball in the hand drill and bunt defense. something that we came up with at Cal State Fullerton when I was there under Coach Horton. A great PFP drill for your pitchers, very competitive. It allows your whole team to get involved. And it's a ball in the hand drill. It's pitchers on the mound. It's usually the outfielders that are the guys in the batter's box. And what we do is we allow them to roll either a drag or a push bunt and run out of the box with your corner infielders and middle infielders. And they're competing to get safe when the defense is trying to beat them. I think this is one of the most up-tempo quality drills to allow your pitchers to get to another level. It's very competitive. It gets very competitive because the outfielders want to win, the pitchers want to win, and it's a very tough drill on the pitchers because the hitters are just rolling the ball and getting out of that box. I put a rule in there that if a guy rolls a ball foul, then he's got to go to the foul pole and back, because we want the balls to be in fair territory. We want it to be competitive, but we want our pitchers to be challenged just like our corner infielders to be challenged. You have your corner infielders a little bit, one step behind the bag. They know they're bunting because you want your pitchers to field most of these bunts, and it's going to be very challenging for them. But it's a drill that, as they get used to it, I think it takes PFP to another level of getting off the mound. The other thing we've done, and we just started doing this at Northridge this year, is bunt defenses. A very important part of the game, being able to get an out on a bunt defense. And in the past, we always had our pitchers throw to the hitters because you want your hitters to be able to bunt. You want your pitchers to be able to throw strikes. But that's been very hard over the course of my career because pitchers aren't throwing 100%. It's hard for them to throw strikes at 100 when they're not throwing 100%. So what we've done is had our guy running the offense, putting on the sign, what side we want the bunt to go down to. And our guy just stands in there with a bat and a ball in his hand, and he throws the ball on the ground where the coach wants him to bunt it. And it makes it a very realistic bunt defense. But the whole thing is you get a lot of quantity in there because you don't take as much time when the guy's throwing the baseball. And again, very competitive drill. You're getting a lot of reps out of it, and it's as realistic as possible. And you're not taking the time for the guy to execute pitches. And as Fred and Jerry and all these guys on here know, it's hard for pitchers to throw strikes in bunt defensive drills. And this is another formula coming off of the ball in the hand that we feel has really allowed our pitchers to take another level, take that next step of being quality defenders. I'm so sorry for going long. That 12 minutes goes fast, Scott.
No, that was great.
Any questions you guys have, and we could talk more about it later on, but thank you for listening.
I love the practicality of it. And we all know in this call is right when you finally get that pitcher to throw strikes in the bunt coverage, the guy can't bunt it fair. And then all of a sudden the drill goes all to hell. But that was what I liked about that is the practicality of all this. Like you were saying about how you can send them down the line. Like I've talked to a lot of coaches that are on this call, and they'll talk about they only have so much time to work on everything. And the fact that you're giving them a routine that enables them to be able to get this in before even getting to any of the team stuff is fantastic. The other thing that I loved is you can get into, you hear all the time, the nitpicky pitching community that'll talk about the towel drill and the neuromuscular this, it doesn't look the same as throwing, but that's not what you were focusing on. You're focusing on the conviction and the intent of that pitch in that moment that can carry into the game, which I thought was a cool way to transition that. No, we're not working on that. We're working on what we're doing within the game. And they're visualizing, like you said, with Dr. Ken Revisit, we're visualizing what we're going to take into the game, which is so vitally important.
Well, and Scott, let me add to that. In this pitch routine, for me, I've always been a big believer. I could be wrong on this, but I've always been a big believer that working on your mechanics is something you do on the side of the field. It's not something you do in the game. I think if you're working on your mechanics during the game, you're not competing 60 feet 6 inches. And that's where the dry mechanics become so valuable, because they can feel their muscle memory, they can feel their balance without executing the baseball. And I think if they're doing that every day, then they're going to get that muscle memory and they're going to have that repetitive quality mechanics each and every time.
That's fantastic. Like I said at the beginning, I could spend 90 minutes with all of you individually, so I just got to make sure we get on to the next topic here. But thank you, Coach Serrano. That was fantastic. So moving on, now we've got Coach Corral. Coach Corral, it's funny, I got a little story about everyone. Like I said, I stalk everybody. But one of my mentors always taught me about knowledge is never enough. And I always find when I get a question answered, I have about 3 more questions that come up once I get an answer. And I find that we've been in this quarantine now, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of online formats like this where you can go on and learn as a coach. And I find it's almost like a bad sitcom, Coach Corral, is every time I go to one of these things, you're always there before me. It's like I get there, I'm like, all right, here we go. And I'm like, how did he beat me? Like, how is he already here? And it happens all the time. And I tried to get there earlier and I just can't beat you. But you're one of those guys that, like I said, when my mentor taught me that is I see it within guys like yourself, because you're always at the same stuff I'm at, trying to learn from whatever, and you're at a much higher level. So your topic's going to be bullpen design. You have been, like I told you yesterday, one of the most creative when it comes to practical and competitive bullpens. And it would be so vital for this crew in here to listen to that. So as much as I'd like to talk to you about a million different things, this would be a fantastic talk for everybody here. So Coach Corral.
Well, thank you very much. And I noticed that Brett Strom is on the call, and I owe it to Brett Strom for embedding that. Before you can become a master teacher, Fred, you first have to become a master learner. So he's got me constantly on these Zoom calls, not him himself, but that saying in itself has changed my life in a very big way. But moving on to the bullpens, I know that we have a variety of coaches on here, and the bullpen that I'm going to share is my favorite bullpen. But for the younger pitchers, coaches that are coaching the younger pitchers, the thing that I would say is learning to master the box fastball. I know that and the box fastball down in the zone. And a little story is of an 8-year-old kid that's playing with my son out in the front yard. I had a clinic talk that I had to do, and I said, I'm going to be talking about this directional aspect. I'm going to talk to this young man, never played baseball. I put a little circle on the driveway just for where he had to start his foot at. And I got down the sidewalk area, and I said, Blake, throw me a fastball right here. Just throw it and try to hit my hands. And he didn't know how to pitch, but his delivery was a little awkward. And he lifted his leg and kind of threw it to me, and surprisingly threw the ball right at me. I threw it back, and being that he never played, fumbled around. Another kid picked it up, handed it to him. When he turned to throw it at me again, I said, now just make sure you start in that circle. I bounced 6 feet to the side. I was now in the grass area of my yard. And typically we teach pitchers to think about release points. When we talk about why was that high, why was that low, we all know that the difference between high and low, in and out, can be within the diameter of a quarter at release. This young man did not step straight down the driveway like he did when I was he turned at me and he threw another pitch straight to me. So young kids know that when they're going to throw a ball to a target, it's a very directional cue. So I would say for the younger coaches that are coaching the younger kids, learn the box fastball, then learn to elevate that fastball. Once you learn a box fastball of throwing the ball to your catcher, the next aspect is now always throwing to your catcher. When your catcher sets up in, you throw it to your catcher. If ultimately you throw the ball to the catcher, you've got a fastball in instead of thinking about release points. But I'm going to go into my share screen and talk about more of a and I think this bullpen can be done with even as young as 12 years of age. And this is my favorite bullpen, and this is a 2 out of 3. And on this sheet here, you can see the sheet that our guys fill out, what it looks like. They're facing 9 hitters. They're throwing a 27-pitch bullpen under this format. They'll throw about a 36 to 38-pitch bullpen. And that'll be with putaways or working off of how this chart went for them. But on that chart, they will designate right or left-handed hitters. They'll visualize, as Coach Serrano mentioned, visualization being a big key. I want them visualizing a lineup. Under that first and second column, I want them to think about the first 2 pitches that they're going to throw. Now, what this bullpen is going to do is it's going to bring about accountability. It's going to bring about pressure. It's going to be pressure packed. It's going to be very competitive. We do this in 2-man format. It's very sequence minded. It works off of certain pitch strategies and the strength of your pitcher. The value of this plan, obviously, is to get my pitchers to attack the zone early. And like I said, it consists of 9 hitters, 27 pitches. And I know a lot of people do the 2 out of 3 bullpens, but not all 2 out of 3 bullpens are the same. And that's what I wanted to share about the situation that we use and the style that we do it. So in grading our bullpens, it creates a better carryover for game strategy and sequencing. Andy McKay put it a wonderful quote that I put on the bottom of that slide. And a pitcher who controls his zone is aware of his skill set and creates an approach for that skill set. He dominates the 0-0 count and the 1-1 count and has the ability to get back in the count when behind. When he gets to the hitter to 2 strikes, he has the ability to finish the at-bat. In understanding the game, he can pitch off the plate and around the situation that arise. In understanding the skill set of your pitchers, which we now have all this technology, but granted, we all have the educated eye. We know good pitches. We know what pitchers can do very well. So if you don't have the current technology, trust your eyes and work off of their skill set and strengthen that skill set with a format similar to this. Now, Coach Weinstein, one of the benefits of being around Coach Weinstein is you get to be around some wonderful people. And Inside Edge, Jay DeChances and Randy Estrie, we went out and asked them, to give us some data on what occurs on the first 3 pitches. And, when you look at the numbers, that square up on the top, it talks about when an at-bat does not end in the first 3 pitches. And when 2 of the first 3 pitches are strikes, you can see in the yellow, the eventual OPS is 590. When that 2 out of 3 for strikes is a strike ball, that drops to 507. When you start out with a ball and go ball, strike, you can see it elevate to 613 and a strike, ball, strike to a 625. When 2 out of the first 3 pitches are not are balls, that moves up to 827. Column below it, talking about when the at-bat ends on the 3rd pitch. When 2 out of the first 3 pitches are strikes, it's an 869 OPS. When it's a strike, ball, strike, 878. When it's a ball, strike, 847. When it's a strike, it turns to a 353. When it's a ball, strike, when you don't get 2 out of 3, you can see that OPS raises up to that 1.01. And to the left, you can see the big leaguers. And now where we wouldn't want to face any of these guys, you would prefer to face the top 5 guys over the bottom 5 guys. Now, this falls into the pitching plan that I learned a number of years ago under Jerry Weinstein, and that was get hitters out or on in 3 pitches and put away in 4. The goal is to accomplish this early in the plan. To accomplish that is to throw first pitch strikes, throw 2 out of the first 3 for strikes, win that 1-1 count, and when ahead, throw snap, neck, putaways, or pressure pitches. I created a grading system for this. And this is why I'll tell you that not all 2 out of 3 bullpens are the same. And you can see up there, I have the counts. Below the counts in the white, you can see the OPS within those counts. When our pitchers throw a ball, we give them a negative, we take away a half a point. When they go to 2-0, we take away another 3 points. So, and working down from an 0-0 count to working to an 0-1 count, and you can see how the OPS drops as you continue to throw strikes, and we just discussed. Working into that strike, we can see that I've given a grade for 6 points for that sequence. A strike, ball, you can see the right is a 5, all the way down to the ball, which is a negative 6.5. And on this, on the bottom are 6 guys who have the same 2 out of 3 scores, very, very similar. At the end of the day, when we throw a 2 out of 3 pin, we say, hey, what'd you throw? How many 2 out of 3s did you get? And in this column, you can see each one of them had 5 out of 9 2 out of 3s. And they go, hey, so did I. Okay, well, how many strikes did you throw out of the 27? And they say, I threw 14 out of 27. And they go, well, so did I. Well, how many first pitch strikes did you throw? And then you can see the differences in these. You can see that the one on the left, it was 5.5 out of 9, 7 out of 9, 6 out of 9, 2 out of 9, 9 out of 9, 7 out of 9. And then how those three-pitch sequence went. Strikes, and that's for strikes. You can see 6 first-pitch strikes, 2 second-pitch strikes, and 6 third-pitch strikes. But on the bottom, these were the scores for all 6 individuals. And you can see not all 2 out of 3 pens are the same. The one on the far right, he didn't throw a third-pitch strike, but in getting 7 first-pitch strikes and 7 second-pitch strikes, he backed up strikes with strikes. And that's the thing that I'm trying to sell to our guys. And by making this grading system, we were able to differentiate between a need to improve bullpen from the guy that's third in from the left to a, hey, you've got a B grade, a low B grade on the right, on the far right. This is what a sample pen looks like. And like I said, they fill that out. And you can see Art Hoven faced a right, left, left, right, left, left, right, right, left, right lineup. And in his visualization, and this was done prior to even coming out to the field, he wanted to start that right-hander off with a box fastball, followed by a fastball away. Now, after they throw those first 2 pitches, because we're thinking about sequencing and how we want to go about our pitching plan, he started out 1-0. So in that fastball away, even though we have to execute that fastball away, instead of it being on the black, we're going to miss more over the plate to try to get the ball, to get a strike. And not just over the plate, but down in the plate. When going away, our priority is to miss down. And then on the third pitch, in that 1-1 count, we fill in that pitch. What did he decide to go in that third pitch? He went with a fastball away. And out of this pen, this was an outstanding pen in which Art threw 21 of 27 strikes. Of the execution, he had 4 strikes. He had 2 strike balls. He had a 2 where he was ball, strike, and 1 ball, strike for a total score of 35.5, which in the end gave a very good bullpen, which we, under our grading system, was an A bullpen. And this is what it looks like. Ian Bedell and Spencer Juergens are throwing, and Ian started off with a first pitch fastball for a strike, so he's at an 0-1 count in his next pitch. Juergens decided to throw his changeup, which is a split. Now, in going in a 2-man format, one of the benefits is you can see Ian is back up after 18 seconds, planning that changeup for a strike. So Ian knows he's in an 0-2 count. Spencer's deciding to go to a fastball away and misses. So Spencer knows he's coming back up in a 1-1 count, and Ian Bedell, he's making an 0-2 pitch here. And this is an 0-2 pressure pitch. Now, where this pitch isn't a strike, in that 0-2 count, we gave it a plus because that's how we want to execute in an 0-2 count. We want to throw a competitive pressure pitch. Juergens went back to his changeup because that's his money pitch in that 1-1 count. And in that 1-1 count, his goal was to win that count. And hopefully, I know I went through that rather fast, but hopefully the information on those slides were well enough for each and every one of you to understand. But not all 2 out of 3 pens are the same. And in a 2 out of 3 pen, you can work in a wonderful format. If you start out, we're working in 3 pitch sequences. So if our young men go 2-0, and as opposed to, okay, what are we going to do here? We ask our guys to reboot, go back to our 2 out of 3 plan. 2-0 count, reboot. 3 pitches, 3-0 count, reboot. Get back to throwing strikes. So, and any other questions pertaining to bullpens, I'd be more than happy to talk about later. But I know that we've got.
Yeah, a couple questions for the room. We got a couple younger coaches in here. So when you say box fastball, coach, what are you talking about?
A box fastball is, for me, if you saw a catcher giving his signal stance and where he's putting those signals down in between those legs, I'm saying from the belly button to those shin guards over the plate, for me, is a box fastball. And that box fastball heightens depending on the count. But early and in pressure situations, we are working the down quadrant of the zone. Same with the elevated fastball in working the upper quadrant and throwing an eye switch fastball. But if we can work on mastering those two pitches, mastering our executing those pitches, then throwing in and out. And if we have time at the end, I can show you just that. Throwing in and out is a directional cue. If every one of you read Derek Johnson's book on pitching, he talks about the back foot being used like a rudder. And for me, I think it's the simplest. It's not only the simplest, but when you start getting a guy that has movement to his arm side and you want to get movement to the glove side, the same movement to the glove side, well, that's a directional piece. That's just throwing your arm side fastball to the other side of the plate, directing it to the other side of the plate. And I think that's why Oral Hershiser and Greg Maddux did that so wonderfully.
Before we move on, like I said, I could ask a million questions. I saw a few people kind of zoom in on their screens with their face. The lines along the ground on your turf bullpen where you were working, the white lines and the yellow lines. You don't have to go, you can talk about it a little bit, but can you explain what those were?
Yeah, it's all part of our directional cueing. When Oral Hershiser threw those 60-plus shutout innings, I was very fortunate during one of his rehab breaks. I was sent to Bakersfield where he did his a rehab stint. And I was very fortunate to ask him this question. And he said, during that time, Fred, I was not nodding yes to my pitches. He says, what I saw were dots and arrows. In thinking about bowling, he saw dots and arrows. So when he was throwing and executing a pitch, he lined up his dot with his arrow and threw his arm side fastball. So those lines are just that for me. There are lanes and a directional piece.
That's great. And I hope the room appreciates the fact that I've always used the comparison with kids and they don't understand the movie. But if you've ever seen the movie Seabiscuit, where he's got to slow the horse down to take a look at the other horses to get his competitive drive to take off in the movie, that's exactly what you're doing in the setting up the competitive bullpens. And a lot of the coaches in here that'll complain they don't have enough time, they don't have whatever. I always advertise for having the dual bullpen, having two people in there, because just that competitive spirit is that it's that practical that you can bring onto the field that you don't get from a single bullpen sometimes.
And I'll talk more about that if we have time at the end, Scott. That multi-pitcher bullpen. Not only does it put it in a game format, it's a very wonderful piece.
Awesome, thank you, Coach. Now moving on to Coach Weinstein. I remember being told by someone close to me about, you got to go see this guy. This guy knows everything. He knows everything. And that's what everyone says about you. But what's funny is in this day and age about I see data and analytics on, your arm's got to have this flexion and that, and it's not really useful. You're the kind of guy that you bring up these stats, and I'll see it on social media. I'll see it when I go to your talks when you're at the best ever. And it's more of how did I not ever think of that? Like who thinks of this stuff, and how did I not come up with it? It's such a practical piece of coaching. So you're going to talk about kind of game management in the sense of a attack plan for pitchers. So the floor is yours.
All right. Well, let's see. Let me get on slideshow here and we can rock and roll. All right, just a couple things before I start. I know we have a lot of youth league coaches in there, 9 and under type guys, and for me with those guys, and it might be 10 or 11 depending upon the ability level. The things I'm talking about is probably not for you. What I would do with the young guys, number one, I wouldn't worry about grip too much. I'd tell them to grip the ball where the ball feels smallest in their hand. I'm not worried about 2-seam or 4-seam. I want the ball to feel small in their hand. These guys are playing the balls. We're using the same size ball for 9-year-olds as we do for big league pitchers, and that becomes a problem with a lot of young guys. The other thing I do is I put the catcher down on one knee, right over the middle of the plate, and all I'd ask him to do is throw fastballs somewhere over the plate. Start over the middle of the plate, and if they miss, you're giving them probably 11 inches on either side, and with youth league umpires maybe more. The reality is the plate is probably 22 inches wide if you take a 17-inch plate and then go a ball's width on either side of the plate where the ball is touching the plate. So again, for you young coaches or the coaches that are coaching younger players, but again, as you go into coaching older players where they have a larger or broader skill set, here are some things that they can do. This is for pitchers and catchers managing their ball game themselves. This is for whether the pitching coach or the manager is managing the game for them, or managing the game to a certain extent and giving the pitcher the right to change the pitch, which I think is important. Number one, I guess there are absolutes, but the one absolute is there are no absolutes. That this is a very liquid endeavor. There's no always and nevers relative to pitch calling. The second thing, the number one priority is to pitch the pitcher's strengths. If I'm a catcher or I'm a pitcher, let's say I'm a pitcher and I have a tremendous scouting report on the other team. I know them better than I know myself or my own team, or I really know myself. What do you want? And this is more for catchers than anything else. I want that. I want to know that pitcher, because I'm going to pitch to the pitcher's strengths way more than I am going to attack the opposition's weakness. Now, advanced pitchers are able to go strength against weakness, but most young pitchers or developing pitchers need to pitch to their strengths. And the reality is that you get hitters out with their strengths most of the time, and I'll go into that in a little bit more depth. What I've done with this presentation, I've kind of cherry-picked a number of slides out of different presentations. There's not one right pitch. There's a long option line of pitches. And it's basically the pitch that you have confidence in. The so-called wrong pitch thrown with confidence is much better than the so-called right pitch thrown with doubt. Most often you get hitters out with their pitch, and I said that earlier, and let me explain what I'm talking about there. Take a guy like Albert Pujols. So of this generation of hitters, he's probably the best fastball hitter of this generation. Yet 50% of his outs are on fastballs. They're within his solid contact, they're within his swing zone, but outside of his solid contact zone. And sometimes they're within his solid contact zone and they get just hit at people. Hard hit balls, the batting average on hard hit balls is about 580. Take advantage of the rule of 68. If you look at any baseball game, day in and day out, and look at the on-base percentage, the big league on-base percentage is like 320. So 68% of all fairly hit balls in the big leagues are outs. And I talk to our pitchers and our catchers and whoever our pitch callers are and make them understand that it's like a casino. And you're the house. The house always wins. And the way you win is by having the ball being put in play. As far as option lines for pitching, it's one pitch at a time. I don't have a long list of pitches how I'm going to attack, a long litany of I'm going to go fastball in, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to throw one pitch. And what I throw on the next pitch is determined by three things. One, how did I throw that pitch? Two, how did the hitter react to that pitch? And number three, where do I think the hitter is, where is attention zone? Is he looking for fastball in the next pitch? Is he looking away? Is he looking in? Let's take an example. Let's say I throw a breaking ball first pitch, and it's kind of a semi-hanger, and the guy whacks the ball 400 feet foul. Well, what do I do on the next pitch? Well, do I throw another breaking ball knowing that probably this next breaking ball is kind of like a mulligan, and when you hit a ball out of bounds off the tee and you always get that mulligan, hit it pretty good. So now I get to throw another breaking ball and adjust off of the first one. Where's the hitter going? Well, the hitter's probably going off a breaking ball because he had a pretty good pass at that breaking ball. So those are the factors that come into play in the decision making. But I think we often get too far ahead of ourselves relative to having a plan that is not pitch by pitch. It's all about one pitch at a time. Some pitchers are pitching to learn how to pitch, and some are pitching to get you out. Where the more polished guy who's is trying to get you out, maybe is more apt to attack your weaknesses if that's his strength. I'm going to talk a little bit about strikes. Fred talked about pitching plan, but to me, this is really critical, that first pitch, because it really impacts the at-bat. The 0-0 batting practice on strikes is 0.68. Now that means that strikes taken, strikes swung and missed, strikes pulled foul, strikes that are put in play, that's what the batting average is over this particular 19,000 pitches that I took off of inside edge. Less than 8% of 0 strikes turn into hits. 97% in the big leagues, 92.7 end up as an out or an 0-1 pitch. Now, the argument against that, the counterpoint is, well, yeah, contact produces a 341 batting average and a 903 OPS. Yes, that's true, but over 50% of 0 pitches are generally taken. So I'm going to take my chances because I think the risk and the reward favors taking the risk of throwing 0 strikes. Once a pitcher gets to 0-1, hitters hit 239, on base percentage 283, and they slug 372. Every pitch that's a ball or a strike has a run expectancy. When you throw a strike and you throw a ball, every time you throw a strike, the run expectancy goes down. Every time you throw a ball, the run expectancy goes up. If you just I'm going to just jump to the last point there, which is critical to me because one of the biggest, I talked to Bill James once. I said, if there's one stat that's going to determine whether we're going to win or lose today, what is it? He says, well, you got to stay on the positive side of the walk strikeout matrix. And that goes for offense and defense. Well, what do you mean? I said, he says, the biggest determining, the factor that carries the most weight in a win or a loss is how many walks do your pitchers have? How many strikeouts do they have? How many walks do your hitters have? How many times do they strike out? If you're on the positive side, chances are you're going to be a postseason team. 69% of strikeouts occur after first pitch strikes. That's not to say that 69% of all first pitch strikes end in strikeouts. 70% of base on balls occur after ball one. I want to show you this. I think this is, I use this with catchers primarily to show them what pitch is important. And the reality is that the pitch that has the greatest impact in terms of run, this right-hand column here, this right-hand column shows you what's going to happen if you throw a strike or a ball on this pitch relative to runs created. So on an 0-0 pitch, if you throw strike one, you're minus 9.2 runs. And the biggest swing, a lot of people say, well, it's that 1-1 pitch. But the reality is the 3-2 pitch. If a 3-2 pitch goes to a strike instead of a ball, you gain on the defensive side 0.59 runs. Now, over the course of a season, somewhere around 18,000 pitches are going to be thrown. Just imagine how many 3-2 counts there are. In the course of a season, if you turn 10 runs positive, somewhere between 8 or 10 runs, that's 8 or 10 runs of WAR equals a win in the big leagues. A win is worth about $9 million. So if you take those 3-2 pitches and the strike and you strike the guy out as opposed to walking the guy, it's worth almost over a half a run. If you do that in the course of 18,000 pitches, you're going to have a lot of 3-2 counts. It really adds up. And from the catcher standpoint, I use this a lot with the catchers, is that being able to frame or to receive that pitch effectively can really turn a game around relative to runs, especially over the course of a season. That framing aspect really creates more wins than any other aspect as far as the catcher's concerned, but it also has application for the pitchers. Yeah, let's see here if we can get to the next slide. All right, let's see. You know what? This is not moving for me. Scotty, you got any thoughts here?
So
I'm on pause. Why does it say my screen sharing is paused?
I think what makes this great is how it kind of scaffolds on top of what Coach Corral was already talking about, right? Is he's got the 3-pitch pen where you're designing, trying to get to 2 strikes, and now you've coupled that with major league data here is talking about, and you say the biggest difference in runs is that 3-2 pitch, correct?
Yes, it is. You know, obviously people talk a lot about, they talk a lot about the 1-1 pitch being critical because from 1-1 to 1-2, or the reality is that the 2-1 pitch is the biggest other than the 3-2 pitch, has the biggest effect on OPS, going from 2-1 to 2-2 or 2-1 to 3-1 is, and then the next one is 2-0 to 3-0 or 2-0 to 2-1, and then the third biggest swing in OPS is 1-1 to 1-2. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about here. I don't know how I'm doing on time. You'll have to let me know.
You got a couple minutes. You're good.
Okay, we'll just cover this slide, and then if there are any questions, we can pick them up. Basically, what I'm trying to do as a pitcher is make the hitter uncomfortable. And for me, there's 6 elements of an uncomfortable at bat. Number 1 is pressuring hitters with 70% strikes, 65% first pitch strikes, trying to back up strikes with strikes. And I think when Fred showed you that 2 out of 3 chart that the hitter was credited with the greatest value when he backed up strikes with strikes. The goal here is to get to 0-2 as quickly as we can. The 2-strike batting average in the National League is 184. So I'm trying to get to 2 strikes as fast as I can. Plus also pressuring hitters with strike after strike after strike makes it very difficult because a lot of them are in the ID mode, and when we take that away from them and continually pounding them with strikes, they're uncomfortable. Second thing is pitching inside for strikes. When I talk about inside, I'm not talking about low and in. I'm talking belt line and above. And if they're off the plate, I'm talking about jamming them where they stand. And we're talking about elevating. When you pitch inside for strikes, especially early in the game, when everybody's paying attention, now that means that they have to cover 22 inches of plate. They can't eliminate. Pitchers go up there and what they're trying to do is eliminate pitches or eliminate zones. If you can't throw right on right arm side strike in, which pitchers are very bad at, by the way, at every level, then what does that hitter do? He takes that inside part of the plate, he eliminates it, and now he turns that outside pitch into a middle pitch, and they're more barrels away because of that. Moving hitters' feet, not only pitching inside for strikes, but pitching inside for balls. Pitching inside for balls below their shoulders, in off the plate, keeps them from diving and taking the inside part of the plate away from you. The separator in professional baseball is fastballs inside. That hitter has to prove that he can hit your best fastball inside. And when you heighten their awareness that you will come in off the plate, they're reticent to dive in, and they have more trouble getting to the ball. And again, when I go inside, or even if I go in for strikes, that's a really tough pitch to keep fair. In general, they end up, if they get the barrel out, they end up pull the ball foul, or they top spin it, or they hook it. And then fourth is the ability to cross count. And this is more higher level stuff for you youth league coaches. Now, cross count is throwing an off-speed pitch in a fastball count. It might be a changeup. It might be a breaking ball. For me, early on, I'd like to develop the changeup after the fastball. But ability in 1-0, 2-1, 2-0 counts to be able to throw off-speed pitches. And then common ball flight. And I put 23 plus feet out of the pitcher's hand where the ball flight is the same so that hitters can't identify pitches, so curveballs don't pop up out of their hand. They identify curveball immediately. This is a Perry Husband thing. He talked about tunneling, but where you're concealing the pitch, because when they don't identify the pitch and you have 2 different pitches occupying the same flight coming at different speeds, now they're going to be earlier, they're late. And that's how you get hitters out, when they're earlier, they're late. And then this is one that we're seeing more and more now, a very delivery tempo. You see a lot of double pumps, fast tempo pitches, no wind up, guys out of the stretch with no one on base, rolling through. So that, as this is especially prevalent now with, we're seeing a lot of leg kick timing. So now they get the leg up, and now I speed up my delivery, and they're late getting their foot down, so they're not in a position to hit the pitch relative to timing. And then also when I talk about delivery, I talk about working fast, 15 seconds or less. Hopefully it's more like 10 seconds, because now we control the tempo of the game. Hitters have an internal clock where they work best, and what we're trying to do is control that by pitching fast. Now, certainly they can call time and step out and all that other stuff, but umpires get tired of that. And what we try and do is make their tempo really fast when they're on offense, and especially when we're on defense, we want really fast tempo, not only is that going to help us be more effective as a pitcher, but it's going to help us offensively because our guys aren't standing out on the field and getting toasted, and then they get back in the dugout and they have no energy whatsoever because they stood out in the field for 20 plus pitches and 15 minutes. Okay, that's what I got for you for right now in the time given.
That's awesome. And what's nice about it is, again, like I say, it builds upon what Coach Corral talked about, because in that bullpen video that Coach Corral showed, he had the time up there too, of the time in between pitches. They're getting right back up there and they're attacking the hitter. And I remember, I believe when you were up at the best ever, Coach Corral, is you had tempo pens where you would have guys up there in pitch sequences of 3 or 5 or whatever it is, and you'd have their partner time them. So it's not just working on the command and all that kind of stuff, but you're working on that tempo to keep your defense involved.
Well, if you don't work on throwing with tempo, your pitchers are not going to be able to do it physically because it's a whole different energy system when you pitch a little bit faster. It makes a big difference. So that if you expect your guys to pitch fast in games, you have to have tempo bullpens.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Thank you, Coach. And now, last but not least, is as you get out of share screen here, we've got Coach Cole. And like I've said something a little bit about everybody. I told him on the phone yesterday that he came up to the best ever. He spoke about when he was at Arizona, how simplified his routine was. And Coach Weinstein just talked about having that catcher, that youth catcher on knee down the middle, boxing that fastball, using command, how much receiving matters in the game now. And you came up to the best ever at a point in my life where all of us young coaches, we go through these times where we think, oh, I'm going to show everybody how much I know. Hey, let's just show everybody how much I know. I'm going to show everybody. And there is a guy who comes up, wins a national championship as a pitching coach, and he's talking about, oh yeah, we're just locating low and down the middle. I'm thinking to myself, at that level, D1, you got guys getting drafted? Like, that's unbelievable. But the simplicity of it and the message you gave was like perfect for me at the time, which is great, which is going to tag along what we've just been talking about for this room, which is great. And we're glad to have you. But you're going to talk about pitch design and development. And do you have the ability to share screen, Coach, or do you need me to?
That's what I'm working through right now.
Perfect. Okay, you'll be good then.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share the pitch design document with everybody also. Give me 1 second. I don't know if that went through.
I can see it. We're good.
Okay, you can see it. Did the file come through? If not, I'll send it later.
Looks good to me.
So let me just clarify a little bit of what you just touched on with the middle down approach. Obviously, in our bullpens and in games, we're working to the edges, but guys that have tremendous movement, a lot of them we would just simplify and work middle down approach. And then also with breaking balls, I had a guy this year in a bullpen. He's throwing a bunch of sliders for balls into the left-handed hitter's batter's box, right-handed pitcher. And I asked him what he's doing, and he said, well, I'm trying to locate that pitch right on the outer half. And I said, well, wait a minute, let's back up. You're not to Max Scherzer's level yet, so let's work middle down, hard command, and be in a power position on that pitch. And that's really where a lot of that thought process comes from. And then automatically when he got that into his head, then he started locating that slider on the outer half of the plate. So I just want to clarify that. We're not trying to throw everything straight down the middle and serve it up for everybody.
Granted.
Okay, so let me get into pitch design. Trying to clear my screen here. Okay, so pitch design for me, I know it's been a hot topic lately, and there's a lot of technology now that's out for people to use, Rapsodo, TrackMan, Edgertronic cameras, PitchFX, all these different things. For me, I'm gonna step back a little bit and simplify. And just for me, when I think of pitch design, I'm thinking of pitchability with our guys. How do we change speeds? How do we go north, south, east, west? And really that process starts for me when I first see a pitcher, whether I'm scouting them, they're at a camp, and I start to visualize and just have a real sense of, okay, what am I forecasting this guy to be? When he shows up in our program in that first year, what do I envision him to be? And I'm gonna go off of really what his fastball looks like, what type of movement he has. So let's just say, for example, I got a guy, which we had here my first year, Aaron Oceanbine, who was our closer. He had a high spin rate on his fastball. And for me, his fastball had late life. So it jumps on the hitter and it looks like it's rising on him. I wanted to pair a split finger with that. So now he's top of the zone, split fingers working down in the zone, okay? The other key aspect for Aaron when I got here was we needed to command both halves of the plate. That was a big area for him to work on, and he got really good at it. So now he's got the ability to cover outer half, inner half. Late in the AB, he can run that fastball with that late life up in the zone. And if the hitter doesn't bite on it, then he can come back with that split finger down in the zone. So he's covering all quadrants. Another example I'll give you is I got a young man who's got a really good curveball. Fastball's more 85, 87 with not a lot of movement. So to pair with that curveball, we're gonna pair his fastball, but the fastball, we're gonna hide it. So we're gonna have it in and out of the zone, on the edges, under the hands, but that curveball is really gonna be his pitch, and then we're gonna offset that curveball with his changeup. I just wanted to give you two quick examples of what I'm gonna dive into on this list. And I'm not gonna go everything since you have the sheet right in front of you, and if there's questions later, then we can dive into it a little bit more. The other area that I go into when I'm looking at pitch design and I'm looking at how we're gonna work on things in bullpens is really what type of swings the hitters are giving us. Whether it's in inter squads, in games, or when I'm out scouting and watching this guy. And that's going to give me more insight into what pitches are effective, what pitches need to be sharpened, what needs to be worked on. The other area is catcher feedback. I'm always asking those guys. I'm asking those guys for what they're seeing. I'm encouraging them to give feedback to the other pitchers, especially when we're working on a new pitch. I want, because mentally, our guys, especially if they feel a little disarmed with the new pitch and they're not getting instant results with them when we're working on it early, they need to be in the right headspace and they need to understand the process, and the catchers can be a huge aspect to helping those guys along in the bullpens by reinforcing that, hey, that pitch is improving, it's getting better. Okay. Kinetic efficiency, I won't spend a whole lot of time on that, but this is a big area for me, movement first philosophy. A lot of the things that we're looking at are a lot of the things that you're hearing right now with effectiveness of pitches, whether it's spin rates, sharpness on the breaking ball. Everything for me goes back to how these guys are moving, how their body's moving, how their delivery looks, key areas that they're strong in, key areas they're deficient in. And just this year, we had some biomechanics professors come out, hook up some stuff to these guys. We're still diving into more of the information, but that for me is a key area of getting the most out of our guys' pitches. So if there's an area that they're weak in, or if their hips are tight, then we need to focus on getting those hips a little bit looser. Those guys can get better direction down the mound, and they're going to get more extension and get out front on their pitches, and they're going to get tighter spin, more late life on their fastballs, things of that nature. Pitcher plan. So I'm looking at these guys in phases throughout the year. So the fall, when we wrap up in the fall, the winter program, spring, and then heading into the summer. And we're gonna set key goals for these guys. So let's just say a changeup is a pitch that we want to add into their arsenal, and it's a new pitch that they're working on to develop. Then in those key phases of the year, and I'll just use the summer as an example, we're gonna set goals for how many times we want that young man to throw those pitches in game and effectively get hitters out. So we'll just say, in your outing, you're going to have 4 to 5 innings that you're going to throw. Let's shoot for 8 to 10 times that you're going to throw that pitch, and advantage counts against the hitter to try to get them out. Just to encourage that they throw that pitch enough, because a lot of the times if we're adding in a new pitch and they're not confident in it, if we don't set goals, they're gonna shy away from that pitch. So we're trying to set obtainable goals, nothing too crazy, but something that's gonna lead them along in their development process. Coach Serrano referenced this earlier in throwing programs, and I can't agree with them more. The throwing program is a huge aspect of what we do every day, and a lot of that is just feel. And the same thing, I agree with them on the changeup. I think it's the best pitch in baseball. I think it's an equalizer. It keeps the fastball fresh. So in our long toss drills, at about 90 to 120 feet every day, our guys are going to throw about 8 to 10 changeups. And I tell them, I'm not worried about location. I'm worried about aggressive arm speed. I want them to be controlled with their bodies, but I want them to be aggressive. After we throw those 8 to 10, they're going to come back in, and they're going to about anywhere from 60 to 90 feet. They're going to long hop their partner about 3 to 5 times with their changeup, and that's to get extension out front. Then at the end, we have a opposite foot drill to work on breaking balls. And this is very helpful for guys if we're working on a new pitch in their pitch design development, to really get extension out front, get feel that pitch off their fingertips and work it to their partner. And that's at about anywhere from 10 to 15 feet from their partner. It's not taxing on the arm, not asking them to be aggressive, but just asking them to get out front and feel what that pitch really feels like off the fingertips. Short boxes. So one of the things that I've gotten away from recently, and I don't take it away from the guys if they like to do it, but flat ground work. I like them to engage with the mound as much as possible. So when they're done with their throwing program, and if there's specific pitches that we're working on that are new to their arsenal, we're going to get on the mound, we're going to do a short box. And it's going to be anywhere, and I time it. It's 2 to 3 minutes on a stopwatch, and it's just really getting daily feel of those new pitches, and then also sharpening the pitches that they've already had in their arsenal and that they want to keep sharp. Let me see here. Okay. Video is another key. So for our guys on Amazon, I spent like $10 and got them a tripod for their iPhones. They come out, they can video their short boxes, they can video the bullpens, and it gives them instant feedback, stuff that they can go back to their house with, look at anytime they want. The other thing that I do on key pitches, if we're adding in new pitches, is I will get clips of big leaguers. And what I'll do is I'll get clips of them throwing it, executing that specific pitch for a strike, and then that pitch for an out pitch with 2 strikes. And I'll give them about 30 different clips of each, have them sent to their phones. That way they can look at them over and over, and it's a visual that they can actually see. Oh, another thing that I do. So we have a box, and I encourage this, and I talk to them. I ask all these guys, do you guys play wiffle ball? Have you ever played wiffle ball? Moving the ball around, different pressure points. There's a box that they have that's out by our throwing baseballs every day that I've taken a bunch of different grips from big leaguers. And I draw the points of their fingers on the ball and where their thumb is, where their fingers, and I write the specific pitch, left-handed pitcher, right-handed pitcher. And one day out of the week, I encourage our guys at a shorter distance to just tinker around and mess with these different pitches and see what they can find out of it. And we talk about it. And if there's something that intrigues them or they're getting good movement on, that's something that we may add into their arsenal and talk about throwing in bullpens. But I'll encourage them for about a week or so to throw that pitch, and let's just see what we got and what we can do with it. Also adding tape. So I've added black tape on some of the baseballs as a visual for some of our guys to see when they're throwing certain pitches, so they can see the action on the pitch and see if they're getting what we talked about when we were going through our pitch design and what we want to do. Are we getting that downward action on that split? Are we getting the 12-6 action on the curveball? Are we getting the proper spin on the slider that we're working on? So that just gives them a visual, and it also helps with our catchers. It gives them a visual also. Our goal is to create deceptive strike throwers and change speeds. So we're looking to create separation between the pitches, so to increase effectiveness to the hitters visually. So this goes into the pitch design also. So we're looking at, and a lot of you guys probably know this, 10 to 12 miles from the changeup, from the fastball. We're looking at that variation in speed. So we'll have a radar gun in our bullpens, checking to see that we are getting that consistent variation. Same with the breaking ball, anywhere from 10 to 12 miles per hour if it's a curveball. We're really looking to make sure that those pitches are not blending, like the slider or the curveball. The speeds of those pitches are not blending together, and we're getting ineffective pitches. Hitter feedback. I will always have hitters stand in the bullpen. So if we're working on a new pitch, same deal with the catchers. I'm asking those guys after a bullpen session, is that an effective pitch? Is that an effective pitch with 2 strikes? Is that something that's you're gonna bite on? Is that pitch getting better? And we'll track and monitor that. And after bullpens, we'll get that feedback also.
While you take a break, Coach, here, can you scroll up a little bit on your screen? Because as you move down, just to make sure the guys can see it.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Because I know I'm getting some text messages. They want to see it because they're engaged. They want to see what you're talking about.
Okay, charts, pitch usage. So we want to make sure that these guys are using some of these new pitches, like I referenced earlier, especially when they're going into their summer programs or even in the fall. I'll call pitches in the fall, and I will force some of these pitches a little bit just to get them comfortable with it and see that they can get good results. So we'll track and monitor that stuff. We'll track and monitor hard contact on some of those pitches, soft contact, the end results on those pitches, so that they can get instant feedback of the results they're getting, not only visually what they see and what they feel in the game, but also over a period of time they're able to see, okay, I'm starting to progress and get better results on some of these pitches. In the bullpens, when we're working on new pitches, I will use different colored cones. So if we want the slider to end up in a certain spot with 2 strikes, I'll give them a visual so they can see the yellow. It's a flat cone. It doesn't obstruct the bullpens at all, but they can see, okay, that's exactly where we want that pitch to end up, or a changeup, middle down, or 12-6 breaking ball, middle down, and they can see the color. It's right in front of the catcher. And then I'll also use a laser pointer at times, and I'll just point. That's exactly where we want that pitch. That's giving them information and feedback of the action and what we're really looking for on those pitches. Visualization is another key area that we do. I will run our guys about 3 times a week at the end of practice. We will go through visualization, and especially if it's a newer pitch that we're working on. And once again, I'm going back to the mental state of it. I want these guys to be confident with that pitch. And I think this aids in the process of that. Once we're getting to the end of practice, I want them to leave with some positive internal feedback. So we will go through with either eyes closed or they can go eyes open sometimes, but we'll go 2 to 3 where we will go, I want you to visualize executing that pitch, 0-0 for a strike. I want you to visualize throwing it for a 2-strike out pitch. And a lot of our guys, they enjoy that, and I think it speeds up and aids the process in developing some of those pitches. So I know I've probably gone pretty fast, and I've gone down this list. Is there any questions that have popped up on any of the specific things that maybe I didn't touch on?
The one question that I saw, and I'll add to it a little bit, is when you are tinkering with a brand new pitch, is when do you either abandon it, or is it a constant process of trying to make it better?
That's a good question. It really depends on what phase. So if it's a guy that's a little bit later in his career, sophomore, junior year, and say he's highly effective with his fastball. I'll give you an example. I had a guy named Kurt Heyer at the University of Arizona who could really command his fastball well, and he threw a slider good enough to where it made the fastball effective enough, and he just pounded the strike zone. We got into his 3rd year, and his changeup the first couple of years it just wasn't coming along, and he just said, "Coach, I'm having good enough success with just these 2 pitches, my fastball and my slider. I don't really want to throw the changeup too much in game." And I said, "That's fine. But in bullpens, we're going to keep throwing it in bullpens because where you want to go next is professional baseball, and you're going to need that changeup." And he was a little frustrated with me. We took it away from calling it as much in the games, but in the bullpens, we kept forcing it. And then when he went on to pro ball, he was in the Cardinals organization. He came back and he said, "Thank you. I understand why now you were forcing that." So I'm not going to totally abandon it unless they just can't get feel for it, but I will take it out of game settings, and we will just continue to work on it on the side. We'll continue to throw it in the throwing program and in bullpens.
Last question I'll have for you before I open up a question for everybody is talking about, you've got in here the TrackMan data, you've got Rapsodo in here, but I know we've got a crew in here of a bunch of people that don't necessarily have that stuff. Do you find value in that tech, or is it you have it capital letters, feel a lot? Is it more about how you're attacking it from an everyday basis as a coach in that bullpen with that pitcher?
I really think it's a combination of both. For me, it's very difficult to get away from the foundational stuff of the day-to-day feel, day-to-day bullpen process, throwing programs, working on your delivery. We do a lot of dry work also during BP. All those things are foundational things, controlling the run game. For me, the technology it's just more of a confirmation and making you more precise as a coach, and also giving instant feedback to some of the players. The one thing that I have trouble with sometimes, what I see is when we have all the technology going on in bullpens and it's stopping the flow of the pen. Guys are making a pitch, they're coming back and, hey, what was my spin rate on that? That's not going to happen in a game. So for me, any of the technology that we have or use, I try to separate it as much as possible. Once we get on the field, I'm really trying to get our guys locked into one primary focus, and that's let's work on getting hitters out. Let's focus on everything we can do, put our time into getting hitters out and helping our team win. And then the technology side of it, once we get out of practice and if we want to sit down in the office, talk about some of these things, go over it, then we can do that. I think it has it does a great service. Like I said, it makes you far more precise and confirms and reaffirms some things that you're working on. But for me, I have a tough time. I don't want to distract too much from the day-to-day operations of what we're doing in practice at that time and trying to make it as game-like and as close to the game as possible.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about this. It's the quote that I heard Scott Brown from Vanderbilt say is, the practice time is the focus is over the rubber, and the game time is the focus is over the plate. And sometimes we lose the fact that focus over the plate is something that's got to happen, and we get too wrapped up in everything else that's going on, and we lose that competitive spirit, which seems to be kind of a theme of tonight between all four of you coaches.
Well, yeah, do basic really, really well. The best guys I've been around, they just do the basic stuff really, really well, and they're highly competitive. And for me, and there may be some other coaches on here that can touch on this, but I haven't figured out a way to extract out of Rapsodo or TrackMan how to make these guys more competitive, or how to keep the main thing with them. I'm intrigued by it. I'm curious by it just as much as our guys, but I think sometimes I have to rein in some of our players. They get too curious with it and they start gravitating to everything they're reading on Twitter or everything that they're hearing about or their buddies talking about, and they want to implement new things. And I'm okay with that. I don't want to take that away from them, but at the same time, let's go step by step and get really good at this one thing and then this next thing, and then we can sprinkle in that third and fourth. Like I think we talked about on the phone, or I know we talked about on the phone yesterday. I gave you an example. Steve Cishek was a guy that I got to sit in on a meeting down at Eric Cressy's place in Florida, and he's a prime example. Like that guy, he's a 10 or 11 year big leaguer now. He's very established. He understands his body. He understands adjustments. And for him to tinker and dive into more with this tech and try to optimize some of his weapons and sharpen them, he's a great candidate. The guy that I'm getting as a freshman who doesn't know how to control the run game yet, who doesn't know how to execute a 2-0 hold slide step change up in a critical situation. Those are key areas that we got to get under that guy's feet and give him a good foundation to where he can compete in games. And then once he's able to do that, then we can start sprinkling in some of the other technology to try to optimize more of what he's got and sharpen his weapons a little bit more. That's just me. I'm not trying to speak for everybody else, but just like Coach Serrano, every day for me, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible with these guys because they gather so much information and they're bringing so much in every day. I'm just trying to simplify it for them and get them to do basic things really, really well.
I think that's a great message for the crew in here. Don't put the cart before the horse kind of thing with all these young arms. Speaking of young arms, I want to open this up to all four of you, and we'll start with you, Coach Cole, and then we'll go back to Coach Serrano, Coach Corral, and Coach Weinstein. Workload is, you could make a case that, I don't know what the stats are nowadays, but college pitchers tend to make it to the bigs a little more than high school pitchers. And you guys come from an avenue where you've all coached college baseball, and college baseball is not the most conducive to managing workload. You got a spring season, you got to ramp up to a summer season. They sometimes have a small break and then you're into a fall season again. Yet you guys produce big league arms on a regular basis. So my question is this, I was talking to Coach Hobbs a few years ago, and he talked about how he sees more dual players in college now. And his theory on that was because they get bored because they all specialize at such a young age that they want to do multiple positions. So they pitch and they play. But my question to you is, we got a room full of people from Baseball Ontario here that we just implemented a pitch count, and they're all concerned about pitch count. My question is, from a workload standpoint, in the environment you guys coach in, how do you, with all of this daily throwing, manage their workloads? And especially sometimes in those dual guys, how do you manage those workloads to make them almost more successful sometimes than the kids that get drafted out of high school that go into minor leagues when they have that long layoff where there's a little more time to develop, ramp up, ramp down, that kind of stuff. So Coach Cole, hopefully I was specific enough. It's a big question, but for this room and in Baseball Ontario specifically, introducing the pitch count this year, I think it's a very pertinent question.
That is a good question. I think beyond just the actual workload of their throwing and their pitching, the other things that factor into college, and I lived it. I managed in the minor leagues, and I was a pitching coach in the minor leagues. The facilities at most college programs, especially Division I now, they're far better than what you're going to find in the minor league system. And I'm not talking about the spring training facility or the big league facility. So when you're talking about strength and conditioning, the amount of training staff that's around to give them proper information, sleep, hydration, all those things that they can add into their repertoire before they get into pro ball, and just having their DNA before they get there, I think puts them light years ahead of a guy coming fresh out of high school. Now, from a workload standpoint, one of the things that I've started to do with our guys, because we're now, I don't know, maybe 10 years into showcase baseball now, where these guys are specializing at a young age or playing year-round baseball all the time. One of the things that I've done with some of our freshmen that come in is I will back off those guys, and I'll tell them exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to back off of them with bullpens and competitive pitching in the fall. I'm going to scale it down quite a bit just to let them kind of reset, get their body stronger, get their arms stronger with our daily throwing program. They're still going to bullpen and all that stuff, but I will start them maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. And then once we get into the season, after we've come back from the winter break, same deal. They're going to throw just a minimal amount of innings early in the non-conference first 2-3 weeks. And then I'm going to turn them loose once we get closer to conference play. And that's strictly to manage their workload through the year. On the other side of it, if we got an older guy who's established, he's been through the college season, I'm going to really look at the amount of innings they need to do in summer ball. So I might, if a guy's, he's given us a full load, he's gone through the year, he's been our Friday night guy, he's pitched quite a bit, I may limit him in the summer to 30 to 40 innings in the first half of the summer, and then bring him back on campus to get with our training staff and our strength and conditioning coach to lift and get stronger. So just for me, and I keep a spreadsheet through the entire year. So everything they do, from short box to bullpen to inner squads, in-game stuff, and it's color coded based off of what they're doing. I'm always tracking that because that gives me a full view. Okay, what did he put in all year? And then that allows me to kind of pull back, whether it's in the winter, whether it's in the summer, and that gives me an idea of how I'm going to kind of plan that out for those guys.
That's great. So Coach Serrano, and you implemented with your throwing is the mental cues, is the dry mechanics and stuff. Does that factor into when you're trying to, again, manage these guys' workload, knowing what's coming down the line? Is that part of the factor? And for the coaches in here, is you managing, like, do you keep track of the pitches and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. You know, being in the college game as long as I have at the junior college level and at the Division I level, you know, we all know it's important in recruiting that you're not turning over many guys that have had arm injuries, and sometimes you can't control that. I have a theory, and it's my own theory, that I don't think kids throw enough during the week, especially in this day and age with travel ball. They go out and they ramp it up on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday weekend series or in a tournament, and they're trying to impress people because us coaches are out there watching them, and they haven't programmed their arm during the week to go out and be able to do that. I think staying on schedule is important. I'm very proud. I'm proud of a lot of things that players that I've been able to coach have done. But one of the proudest things that I like to tell recruits is that over a 32-year span, I've had 5 guys that have blown their arm out. And I'm proud of that. That's a low number over a long career. And I go back to more or less is more, or less is more, and more is less. And a lot of people have questioned me over this, but I'm very diligent. I'm very careful with our guys. They're on a throwing program, and I'll just go quickly through the calendar. If we ramp up starting in August or September, by August 1, our guys have not thrown more than an inning. Then they graduate to 2 innings. As we go through the fall, our guys through the fall, and this has happened almost at every stop I've been at, our guys will not throw more than 3 innings in an outing over in the fall. And then I gradually build them up when they break away from us over the winter months on their own. And that's something they have to do on their own. We'll send them in the program is they'll throw simulated bullpens that'll build up to 5 innings when they come back in January. When our guys come back in January and February practices, they will not go more than 5 innings or 75 pitches in a scrimmage game. And our bullpens consist of 30, 35 pitches. And that's where I've been questioned a lot is, well, how do you guys throw 30, 35 pitches in bullpens and are able to throw complete games? We've never had problems with that. That's what the strength program, that's what the conditioning program, all their arm care does of building that up. And I kind of compare it to weightlifting. If you went in, or I go back to that travel ball situation, if you go and lift hard one day of a week, you're going to be very sore for the next couple of days. But when you do it 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, your body's going to get conditioned to that. And I think some guys don't understand the philosophy of catch play and throwing hard each and every day. I don't think catch play should hurt your arm. When you're playing at a 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, that should be conditioning your arm and building resilience in your arm. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's not coaches overthrowing guys as much. It's guys not being conditioned like many college coaches do. We have a plan. Fred has a plan. Coach Weinstein has a plan. Coach Cole has a plan that leads our guys all the way up through June, because my goal is I want our guys to be stronger in May and June than they were in February. So it's a gradual buildup. I always say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And you want to build your guy up that at the end of the season, he's able to go 100, 115 pitches in a game, and it's not that hard. But our guys in February and early March aren't going to go more than 75 pitches in an outing. I don't care if they're throwing a no-hitter through 5 innings. If they hit the 75 mark, I'm going to get them out, because like I said, it doesn't bode well if you have a history of hurting a lot of arms. And many coaches on here have had guys with arm injuries. That is genetic. It's something that was going to happen already because of maybe something that they had done earlier in their career. But I'm very careful with the arms. And like I said, my philosophy has always been more is less, and less is always more in my opinion.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I know Coach Weinstein's a fan of Eugene Bleeker's the old school, new school approach. And it's funny you're talking about all this about conditioning the arm, yet the new school approach, you see these motor sleeves that come out, and they talk about having a buildup of a chronic workload so those acute spikes don't cause injury, which is a lot like if you read Alan Yeager's long toss book, it sounds a lot similar without the motor sleeve behind it. So it sounds a lot to me as that build up over the course of time, that chronic workload that you're giving them. Like you're saying, you're not lifting once a week. It's that chronic workload. So when they have that spike of that start or whatever it is, you've prepared them for that. Not they've had a couple days down and then all of a sudden they got to throw again.
And then I also think, Scott, it's learning your players. I don't have everybody on the same throwing program. There's guys that have 2 days off in between bullpens. There's guys that have 1 day off in between bullpens. It's all getting a feel for the individual that you have. And coaches that are on here, it's a little bit more difficult than we have it because we're around our players every day. So we know what their workload is every day. For you coaches that are seeing guys twice a week, you don't know what they're doing on the side. You don't know what they just did the day before. They may be playing on another team and you're expecting them to throw a side work, or you're expecting them to throw in a game, and they may have just thrown 2 days ago. And it's kind of unfair to you because you don't get to see them every day like the college coaches do, as we have the luxury of having our guys each and every day. So we know exactly what they're doing each and every day within our program.
Yeah, that's a great point. And moving on to Coach Corral, is both Coach Cole and Coach Serrano talked about a specific thing, the showcases. And I was lucky enough that Baseball Ontario sent me to Vanderbilt for 10 days. When I was talking to the strength coach there, I told Coach Cole this yesterday, I said, what's your biggest challenge? And he goes, I get showcase ponies. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he goes, I get showcase ponies and I need to build thoroughbreds for Brownie because He goes, these kids come in, they throw 93 maybe for 15 pitches, whatever it is, and then they're done and they shut down, they go up. And he goes, I got to build these guys up. So Coach Corral, from that standpoint, everything that we just talked about, throwing programs, workloads, and the types of players that you get in, how do you go about managing that workload and making sure these kids are prepared to throw?
Yeah, if you could let me share my screen, I just got some things to share. But the thing that I would say is, the bottom line is, those are great numbers of Coach and Serrano and keeping guys healthy. And equally we have, the same numbers go through our pitching plan. And the thing that I know is that when you make throwing your livelihood, your arm will adapt. And the workload is very important. And, who knows what that workload is? And the way that you understand that workload is the day-to-day throwing that your athletes can do. If your athletes cannot do a day-to-day throwing program, and we throw 6 to 7 days a week, sometimes 27 straight days. If my guys cannot throw on a day-to-day plan, I know something mechanically needs to be remedied. I know that we've got to then look at how we're going to fix this to get him into throwing. What is hampering his throwing? And, one of the things that we do is I monitor, everything. And I'll just, if I can get that, there you go. And this is what a 30-day sheet looks like for me with all my pictures. And you can see that colored in. I've got a key down there, and I'm not going to go through explaining the key because I know we're on a time crunch here. But you can see that's my pictures in that column down. And those are days going across and a lot of throwing. We don't have a great number of off days. And I do monitor their throwing. And like Dave was saying, it's knowing, that catch play isn't, throwing 100% all the time. Most injuries in the big leagues, they occur early on. When you're talking about spring training and leaving spring training. And the reason is some guys, they don't get ready soon enough, or they're too monitored by these workloads that when they go into a competitive format, things happen. The thing that I would say is that, when you make throwing your livelihood and when you can communicate with your athletes, and this is a little grading system that I have with my guys. And when my guys throw, I'm with them at all times. If they're down there throwing, I'm not in the dugout talking about what we're going to do in practice and wait for my guys to finish. I'm walking that line, and I would encourage you to walk that line. If you're going to improve velocity, if a young man is going to improve velocity, he's got to have 3 10 days in a week. You've got to push the arm, just like a sprinter's got to push the stopwatch. You've got to push the radar gun, and you have to have 3 10 days in a week. When most guys, when they handle their bullpens, they throw at an 8 grade, and they'll hit 92, but they pitch 87 to 88. They throw 87, but they pitch 83 to 84 because a majority of their bullpens are at 83, 84 in preparation for the game, saving their bullets. That rarely do they ever know where the ball's going when they're throwing it at their higher velocity. So as I walk the line, I'm communicating with my guys with a 0 being a sitting on the couch and eating Cheetos type day to what's normal is a 7 and 6. Everyone's kind of in that 7 to 6 range. I want my guys, if they're going to maintain their stuff, they have to have at least 2 10 days in a week. And that's the bullpen and the game. In those other 5 days, they got to find another way to grab a 10 if they're going to work on improving their velocity as well. Most guys, as they're, like I said, they'll be at a 7 and 6s. And as I'm walking down that line, I'll say, hey, knowing that previous guy was at a 7 the day before, I'll say, hey, what are you doing today? How you feeling? Today I'm about a 5. Well, I know something's going on there. And I'll say, hey, are you feeling a little tight today? Is something going on? Is there an issue? Oh, no, sir. He says, I think I'll get it up to an 8 or 9. Okay, we're good there. If a guy's at a 9 or a 10, and I'm going, hey, what are you going to be at today? And he says a 10, I can say, hey, why don't you dial it down to an 8 because you're going to be on the bump in 2 days. You're going to be throwing in a live scrimmage here against our hitters. I want you to tone it down. So communicating with your guys and having a grading system is the best way I know to communicate. But throwing frequently is the key. And, talking to a lot of the minor leaguers or big leaguers that I met over the fall and to now, asking about, well, how much time should I take off in a year? I've heard a lot of them saying, hey, that 2 to 3 weeks and getting back onto throwing. The year-round throwing is, Max Scherzer's a year-round thrower. And this young man that was talking to me said, yeah, I think I'm only going to go 3 weeks because everybody I talk to, the guys, the big shooters in the show, they all talk about how they are year-round throwers. Year-round throwing, when you make throwing your livelihood, your body will understand what it's going. Throwing cannot be a hobby.
I heard what I love about that is, like, if you listen to Alan Yeager talk about it, is if you don't have the time to kind of decompress, go down, be able to cool down, and then you have that 8-week buildup again to get ready for your season. If you don't have that time, then there's no point of shutting it down. And the same is Eric Cressy had a wonderful podcast with I believe it was Ben Hansen, who was the motor sleeve guy. Same thing is, if you don't have, he goes, that's a complicated question to throw year round, but if you don't have the time to actually decompress, go down, and then be able to build back up again, then you might as well keep throwing, because those spikes in your workload are going to cause injury, which I love the year round throwing. And I love how all three of you have said so far, not the kids don't pitch enough, it's they don't throw enough, right? Which is the great message.
One of the things I'll say, Scott, is, about 20 years ago, one of my, the guys that I really had a tough time with, and not a tough time with anything that he did, but the limitations that we put, such as pitch counts, long distance throwing, Dr. Fleissig, outstanding. If you've got any chance to hear him speak today, the tone that we got 20 years ago is far different than the tone that we got right now. So when you think about the limitations that we place on athletes because of science or because of data, understand that data and science are only what we currently know at this given moment. And 20 years later, you'll hear a different vibe out of Dr. Fleissig.
That's awesome. Coach Weinstein is being the guy, and I know Coach Cole's had experience with the Padres, of being the pro guy in all of this, is how do you guys go about managing workloads?
Well, I'm going to keep this short because everything that could be said has probably already been said pretty much, but big fan of throwing volume. And I think that not all pitches and pitchers are the same. And when we start with pitch counts and we put a pitch count on player A and player B, you have two different body types, two different strength levels, a lot of different things. And so I'm not sure that one size fits all. I think one thing I do like, I think that we need to look at is not so much the overall pitch count, but the number of stress pitches that are thrown in a particular inning. I think you really have to be careful there. I think one of the things for me, if I'm throwing a true bullpen, preparing for a game, when I prepare for a game, it's about making pitches. Making pitches is pretty much about hitting your target. And for me, when I see guys throw 40 pitches in a bullpen, if a guy's throwing 40 pitches, he ain't throwing 40 pitches in a game for me. By the time he gets to 30, I got someone up and he gets to 35, he's out of there. And so what I really like, and I think is more game-like and safer, especially guys get fatigued after a certain level. Now, everybody's a little bit different. I'd rather see it being up and down, like a 17 and 18 or a 20 and 20 or whatever that happens to be. I think you need to watch high pitch counts in individual innings and have a protocol. And most pro clubs, if a guy throws 35, he's done. If it's the first inning, he's done. And again, one of the things, we have good tools today, especially in professional baseball, with TrackMan and Motor Sleeve. We can monitor release height, we can monitor arm slot, we can monitor spin rate, we can monitor velocity. With Modus, you can monitor at one point in the elbow joint what's happening in terms of valgus stress. I think those are good tools that we can utilize and should utilize in the process. But again, recovery is huge. Listening to your body is huge. Making individual schedules, long-term schedules, to me, I'm going to be more in tune is asking a guy, and Fred's chart was excellent. I do that all the time. Hey, where are you today? Here's what we're planning on doing. What do you think? Okay, but I'm a real fan in throwing. Throwers throw, but they throw differently depending upon what their body tells them on a particular day. And I think that the smart pro guys listen to their bodies. And then I think the other thing is they're especially for young guys and the less experienced guys, that you need time to build a bigger engine. You know, I'm not totally into, hey, mass is gas, but mass is a factor here. And that doesn't mean you stop throwing, but the emphasis is more on strength in terms of building lower body strength or arm strength through a particular program for a particular portion of the year. And then during the game, I monitor the movement pattern of my pitcher. You know, what's his tempo look like? Usually when guys, when the red flag goes up, when they start taking more time in between pitches, when they start shaking off more pitches, when things start to flatten out a little bit, they lose depth. I mean, it's just the stuff that you learn through experience by being in the dugout and using your eyes. And again, I'm not so conservative that I lose the value of throwing volume, but I am conservative enough to know I'd rather get a guy out a hitter too soon or two hitters too soon than two hitters too late, because when guys get hurt, a lot of times it's a cumulative thing that doesn't necessarily happen on that pitch, but it happens when they are fatigued and they get into a bad movement pattern.
I think that's a great point, the building the engine. I think it's 75% of all major league pitchers are 200 pounds or above, something like that. So that's a wonderful point. I love the point on the scale with Coach Corral, and you said it, because with the young kids, I coach young kids, and I've turned the number system into emojis, like just have a happy face or a frowny face, and they just point to one of them, and it makes it as simple for those kids. It doesn't have to be a D1 level. And 5 weeks ago, when Brent Strom was on, he mentioned the same thing you did, Coach Weinstein, about that 35 pitch inning is going to do more damage than if I spread those pitches out amongst a certain amount of innings. So he said the exact same thing, which is a great point for all the young coaches in here.
Unfortunately, what happens is more often than not, that 35 pitch inning comes in the first inning, and you got 3 pitchers for today, and this guy's got to give us 100 pitches, and now he throws 35. So you need to have a pretty good strategy early in the game in terms of high percentage strike pitch to high percentage locations, and rely on the rule of 68 to get you through innings, and know how to economize pitches and go after people with 2 strikes and not pitch around people and be in the attack mode so that you can avoid those high pitch count innings, especially early in the game when it puts a lot of stress on your staff.
That's great. And Coach Corral, you got something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, I know that, you made a comment that, these coaches that are listening, a majority of them might not be with their pitchers at all times. One thing I would tell you is that I like the emoji thing, by the way, as far as like in the hospital, how do you feel? But the thing that I would say is get young men to journal. And you can make a small journal form, and you can say, oh, okay, on the days that I'm not seeing you, what was your effort level on Monday? It was, a really smiley face, or it was a 7 or an 8. It was a 10. And as you're looking at this, then you can have a better communication system with your athletes. But the importance of telling guys to journal, of the young men that I've been fortunate enough to see make it to the big leagues, 80% of those guys were journalers. Journaling is a big time thing, and that's a very good habit to get your young men into, and it's a great way to communicate with your athletes.
Yeah, it's funny. Dirk and I talk a lot, is with my little guys, is right. We have homework sheets, right? We have a shared photo album, and they have to put pictures, their parents have to put pictures and video on there, and they got to show that they've done these homework sheets. And we're eventually going to get to the point where they journal. I think it's a wonderful idea. Now, on that note, is a lot of the parents do the work for them. So it's like you guys getting a questionnaire back from a recruit, and mommy and daddy filled it out. So you're wondering how much does the kid really want it when mom and dad's doing all the work. But no, I got to cut it here. Like I said, I could go for another 2 hours with you four. This was absolutely fantastic. It was an absolute pleasure for me to talk to you guys. Like I said, I go to all these clinics, and I stalk you at these things. So I really, really appreciate you spending the time with us, for all the coaches in Baseball Ontario. But I really appreciate you spending the time with me. It's awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey, on behalf, thanks, Scott. A great job, Scott Robinson, being our host. Again, thanks to Coach Shaun Cole, Dave Serrano, Jerry Weinstein, and Fred Corral, all former speakers, all great friends of Baseball Ontario. All have been at the Best Ever Coaches Clinic. All will be at future Baseball Ontario Best Ever Clinics. Some of the things to keep in mind: keeping things simplified, get hitters out in 3, So-called wrong pitch thrown with confidence, better than so-called right pitch thrown with doubt, and visualize a 2-strike out pitch. Those were just 4 of the gems tonight. Now you understand why this pitching roundtable was going to be so awesome. You now understand why there's 125 years of coaching experience. And if each and every coach, and again, it doesn't matter if you're a travel team coach, high school coach, collegiate coach, or minor pro coach, if you didn't learn something tonight, there is definitely something wrong. Hey, folks, again, to all 4 of you, thank you very, very much from Baseball Ontario. We truly appreciate it. We know you have lots of demands on your time. We know lots of people ask you to do these kinds of things right now as we're going through the crazy times we live in. So we really and truly and sincerely appreciate each and every one of the 4 of you doing what you did tonight. So thank you from Baseball Ontario. Before I go, I'd like to just remind everyone as individuals, coaches, and as a ball community, let's continue to listen to each other, stand together, stand united, support one another, and stay strong as one team. And please, with everything going on out there, health-wise and everything else, please stay safe. This is Dirk Drieberg on behalf of your host, Scott Robinson, and your 4 guests, Shaun Cole, Dave Serrano, Fred Corral, and Jerry Weinstein, saying thank you and good night. Thanks, coaches. I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. Truly appreciate it.
That was
Thank
great.
you. Pleasure being on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.